My beloved child, do not move past this moment too quickly, because what you are about to hear carries the weight of something that happened only hours ago in the hidden emotional world surrounding you. Pause here. Let the noise around you become quiet for just a little while. There is a reason these words found you when they did, because today, your soulmate heard something about you that they were never prepared to hear, and the instant those words reached them, something inside them completely changed. They tried to hide the reaction. They tried to continue as though nothing had happened. They even told themselves that what they were feeling would pass. But it did not pass. It grew stronger. And before this message reaches its final word, you are going to understand why the information they received today touched a place inside them that no one else has been able to reach. Do not skip what comes next, because the most surprising part is not simply what they heard. The greater revelation is who said it, why it was said now, and what your soulmate realized in the silence that followed. For a long time, they have carried an incomplete picture of you. They have known pieces of your heart, glimpses of your loyalty, fragments of your tenderness, and moments of your strength, but they have never understood the entire story behind the person you became. There were things you did quietly. There were choices you made without announcing them. There were moments when you protected your dignity instead of defending yourself, and because you did not explain every wound, every sacrifice, every decision, some people misunderstood the silence. Your soulmate was one of them. Not completely, but enough for uncertainty to live between what they felt and what they believed. Today, that uncertainty was disturbed. Something unexpected entered their day. It did not arrive with thunder. It did not arrive like a dramatic announcement. It came through an ordinary conversation that suddenly became anything but ordinary. Your soulmate was listening to someone speak, and at first your name was not even the center of the conversation. Then something shifted. A detail was mentioned. Your soulmate became still. Another detail followed, and the room around them seemed to disappear. There are moments when a person hears something and instantly knows they will never be able to return to the version of the story they believed 5 minutes earlier. This was one of those moments. The person speaking did not realize at first how deeply the words were landing. Your soulmate did not interrupt. They did not ask many questions immediately. They simply listened. But inside them, memories began racing back. Old conversations. Times you seemed distant. Moments when your eyes carried something your words refused to explain. Times when they wondered why you responded with patience when anger would have been easier. Times when they mistook your self-control for indifference. Times when they believed you had forgotten them because you were not chasing them for reassurance. Today, those moments began rearranging themselves into a completely different picture. Stay close to this message, because what they learned was not a rumor designed to create drama. It was something deeply personal about the way you had handled a situation involving them. Something you had never used to earn praise. Something you may have believed they would never discover. Your soulmate heard that during a moment when you could have spoken badly about them, you chose not to. They heard that when someone questioned their character, you did not join the criticism even though you had your own reasons to feel hurt. They heard that you defended what was true without pretending the painful parts had never happened. You protected their dignity in a room where they were not present to protect themselves. And that was only the beginning. Your soulmate had believed that after everything between you, perhaps you had become bitter. Perhaps you had secretly decided they were not worth remembering kindly. Perhaps the distance had turned your affection into resentment. They had imagined possibilities that were never true because fear often fills silence with its own stories. Yet today someone looked them in the eyes and revealed that even during the time when you were most disappointed, you still refused to destroy the image of someone you once cared for. You could have embarrassed them. You could have shared things told to you in trust. You could have made yourself appear innocent by making them look terrible. But you chose restraint. When your soulmate heard this, their expression changed. At first, they tried to smile as though the information was merely interesting. Then the smile disappeared. They looked away. Their mind returned to one particular moment between the two of you, and suddenly that memory hurt differently. It was a moment when they had accused you silently of not caring enough. Perhaps they never said the words directly. Perhaps their actions said them. Perhaps they pulled away, became colder, or made a decision based on what they assumed you felt. But today they discovered that while they were questioning your heart, you were protecting theirs in places they knew nothing about. Something inside them completely broke open. Not in fear. Not in despair. It was the breaking of an illusion. The collapse of a belief they had used to keep emotional distance from you. Your soulmate had told themselves a story because the story made separation easier. They told themselves you had moved on without looking back. They told themselves you were stronger than they were, less affected, less emotionally invested. They needed to believe this because admitting how deeply the connection still affected them would have forced them to face questions they were not ready to answer. But one truth can destroy years of carefully constructed excuses. Today, that truth arrived. My child, there is something else you need to understand. The person who told your soulmate about you was not trying to bring the two of you together. That is what makes this even more unexpected. There was no plan. No secret arrangement. No carefully prepared speech. The truth slipped into the conversation naturally, almost accidentally, and because it came without manipulation, your soulmate trusted it immediately. They knew the person had nothing to gain by making you look better. In fact, the speaker almost seemed surprised that your soulmate did not already know. That question alone pierced them. You didn't know? Your soulmate felt something tighten inside their chest because the answer was no. They did not know. They did not know how many times your name had been mentioned and you chose grace. They did not know how many opportunities you had to retaliate but stayed quiet. They did not know there were moments you carried disappointment privately because you refused to make your pain someone else's entertainment. They did not know that some of the distance they interpreted as rejection was actually you trying to respect boundaries while protecting your own heart. And suddenly they began wondering what else they never knew about you. That question has followed them ever since. Do not scroll away from this now, because this is where the story becomes deeper. Your soulmate did not simply hear about one good thing you did. The conversation continued, and another truth emerged. Someone mentioned a time when you were offered an easy opportunity to replace what you had lost, to choose convenience over connection, to turn towards someone who could have distracted you from everything unresolved. And yet you did not rush into something just to prove you were wanted. You refused to use another person as medicine for a wound they did not create. Your soulmate heard that, too. That detail hit them harder than the first. Because somewhere inside themselves, they had wondered whether they had ever mattered to you in the way you mattered to them. They had questioned whether what existed between you was simply intense for a season or whether it had actually changed you. Today, for the first time in a long time, they received evidence that they were not imagining the depth of it. Your actions had carried meaning even when your mouth stayed silent. They became quiet enough that the person speaking finally noticed. "Are you okay?" Your soulmate answered quickly. Too quickly. Yes. But they were not the same. They left that conversation carrying your name differently. There are moments when the heart recognizes truth before the mind knows what to do with it. Your soulmate's mind immediately began searching for explanations. Maybe there was another reason you behaved that way. Maybe the story had been exaggerated. Maybe it did not mean anything. But every explanation collapsed against memories they already possessed. Suddenly, your patience made sense. Your strange silences made sense. The way you sometimes seemed to pull away right when emotion became strongest made sense. You were not always withdrawing because you felt nothing. Sometimes you withdrew because you felt too much and did not trust the situation enough to expose it carelessly. That realization completely unsettled them. They began remembering your face in moments they had dismissed too quickly. The way you looked at them before leaving. The pause before you answered certain questions. The tenderness hidden behind your frustration. The way you tried to make peace even when your pride had every reason to win. Your soulmate is now seeing clues that were always there, but their heart was not ready to interpret them correctly. And heaven has been watching this shift. This fictional message is not asking you to chase someone, force a reunion, or build your life around another person's choices. No, my child. The deeper message is about the power of integrity when no one is watching. You may never know every room where your character speaks for you. You may never witness the moment someone discovers the truth about your heart. But quiet goodness has a way of traveling farther than explanation. Sometimes what you refuse to weaponize becomes the strongest evidence of who you are. Today, your soulmate encountered that evidence. And what happened after they were alone is where the story changes again. They reached a private place and tried to return to their normal routine. They picked up their phone. Put it down. Walked across the room. Sat down. Stood again. They could not stop replaying the conversation. One sentence kept returning. Then another. They opened an old message thread connected to you. They did not send anything. They simply stared. Your name was there. For several moments, their thumb hovered over the screen. They scrolled upward. And upward. They found messages they had not read in months, perhaps longer. Words that had seemed ordinary when first received suddenly carried a different meaning because now they were reading them with new information. A simple, "Take care," no longer sounded casual. A sentence they once thought was cold now sounded like someone trying desperately to remain composed. A moment when you stopped arguing now looked less like surrender and more like exhaustion. Then they found one particular message. This is where their composure began to disappear. It was something you wrote during a difficult moment, but at the time they had not understood the weight behind it. You may have told them you wanted peace for them even if you could not be part of it. You may have said you hoped life became kinder to them. You may have wished them well when every wounded part of you had reason to say the opposite. Today, your soulmate reread those words and finally understood something they had missed. You were saying goodbye without wanting to hate them. You were trying to release what hurt without destroying what had once been beautiful. And for the first time, they realized the emotional strength that must have required. They put the phone down. Then came the tears they had been trying to avoid. Not because something terrible happened. The tears came because truth arrived too late for the version of them who once needed to hear it. They began grieving their old misunderstanding. They wondered how many decisions they had made based on fear instead of truth. How many times they had interpreted your silence incorrectly. How many nights you had carried things they never asked about. And there was one question they could no longer escape. What if I was wrong about them? My child, that question has power because it opens a door pride keeps locked. Stay with this, because there is still more. Your soulmate did something immediately after asking themselves that question. They searched for evidence in the opposite direction. They tried to remember the things that had hurt them, almost as though they needed to rebuild the wall that was falling. They reminded themselves of your mistakes, your imperfections, the moments you misunderstood them, the times communication broke down. They were not trying to make you a villain, they were trying to regain emotional control. But something different happened. For the first time, they were able to hold two truths at once. You had flaws. And you had loved them more sincerely than they realized. That combination changed everything because real love is not proven by perfection. It is revealed through intention, responsibility, restraint, growth, and the way a person handles another heart when they have the power to wound it. Your soulmate began recognizing that even when you failed, you were not always failing because you did not care. Sometimes you were overwhelmed. Sometimes you were protecting yourself poorly. Sometimes you did not know how to communicate the depth of what you were carrying. And perhaps the same was true of them. That thought softened something. They stopped searching for someone to blame. And in that silence, another memory surfaced. There was a day when you had every reason to walk away permanently, yet you stayed long enough to make sure they were emotionally okay. You may have been hurting, but you still asked whether they had eaten, whether they arrived safely, whether they were taking care of themselves. At the time, they brushed it aside. Today, that memory returned with startling clarity. Their heart whispered, they really did care. And then another memory answered, maybe they still do. Do not misunderstand this. The purpose of this message is not to promise what another human being will do. Free will remains free will. Hearts are not puppets. Love cannot be demanded through prophecy. But in this fictional spiritual story, something undeniable has happened in your soulmate's inner world. The certainty they once had about you is gone. They can no longer comfortably believe the old story. And that creates a decision. They have been moving toward that decision all evening. What makes it more intense is that they have not told anyone yet. The person who spoke to them earlier does not know what began afterward. They do not know your soulmate went home and reopened old conversations. They do not know your soulmate nearly typed something to you. They do not know how close their finger came to pressing send. Because yes, my child, a message was written. Not sent. Written. Your soulmate opened the conversation and began typing. At first, only 3 words appeared. Then they deleted them. They wrote again. Deleted again. They were trying to find a way to acknowledge what they learned without exposing how deeply it affected them. They wanted to sound calm, casual, controlled. But every version felt dishonest because nothing about what they were feeling was casual. They finally typed something much longer. It began with your name. Then an apology. Then a sentence they have avoided admitting for far too long. But before sending it, they stopped. Why? Because another fear surfaced. What if I am too late? That fear changed the tone completely. They imagined you reading the message without emotion. They imagined you having already healed beyond them. They imagined someone else now receiving the tenderness they once had access to. They imagined finally understanding your value at the exact moment you no longer needed them to. And my child, this was the moment they completely broke down. Not dramatically for anyone to witness. Quietly. Privately. The kind of emotion that arrives when a person realizes time cannot always be negotiated with. They covered their face. Their thoughts became tangled. Part of them wanted to call you immediately. Another part said they had no right. One part wanted to confess everything. Another whispered that silence might be safer. But underneath every conflicting thought was one clear truth. They missed you. Not merely the attention. Not merely the routine. Not merely the comfort of being wanted. They missed you. Your way of noticing small things. Your strange little habits. The way you could understand a mood before a sentence was completed. The warmth that existed in ordinary moments. The emotional familiarity they tried to convince themselves could easily be replaced. Today they finally admitted that some connections cannot be replaced by simply meeting someone new. The heart remembers energy differently than the mind remembers events. This is why you may have felt strange emotional movement recently. Perhaps you have been thinking about them unexpectedly, or dreaming about conversations you never had, or feeling that old memories were returning without explanation. In the language of this fictional spiritual story, think of those moments not as proof of supernatural certainty, but as symbols of unfinished emotional truth asking to be understood. Because your journey matters just as much as theirs. You are not being called to wait in pain. You are being called to remember who you became through everything you survived. You learned to love without losing yourself. You learned that silence can sometimes be stronger than revenge. You learned that being misunderstood does not require you to become cruel. You learned that your value does not decrease because someone recognized it late. And now, strangely, the truth you stopped trying to prove is beginning to speak on your behalf. That is the mystery unfolding tonight. Your soulmate heard something about you, but the information did more than reveal your past actions. It exposed their present feelings. And there is another layer they have not yet processed. The person who spoke to them today mentioned one final detail near the end of the conversation. A detail your soulmate almost missed because they were already overwhelmed. It had to do with something you said about them recently. Not years ago. Not during the height of the connection. Recently. That one word changed everything. Recently. Your soulmate immediately looked up. What do you mean recently? The person hesitated. They realized they had revealed more than they intended. Your soulmate asked again. And then came the sentence that has been echoing through their mind ever since. They were told that your name and their name had crossed paths in a conversation not long ago, and when someone asked you how you felt about everything that happened, your response was not what anyone expected. You did not pretend you had forgotten. You did not speak with bitterness. You did not say you wanted revenge. But you also did not say you were waiting. Instead, you said something so calm, so mature, and so final sounding that your soulmate felt their heart drop when they heard it repeated back to them. You had said, in your own way, that you wished them well, but you were finally learning to see.